But she's hiding her true identity as a Jewish woman because the owner of the workshop is none other than Haman. And then, of course, that whole story of Haman that we're familiar with
Hmm.
takes place, and Sazana ends up becoming a friend to Queen Esther, ends up playing a very important role in Esther's uh, life and Esther's efforts to save her people.
We'll talk about this and much more today. Welcome to a Writer's Day podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to Writer's Day podcast. My name is Ruth Douthit, and I'm an award-winning multi-published author of books in various genres. And I just released book 3 in my Love and Romance in Italy series. The Streets of Florence is out in the world. And now I'm going to be releasing my Christmas novella. It's a cozy mystery set in a small town. Murder at Christmas Tree Village releases December 2nd. So head over to my website to learn more about me and these upcoming projects, and you'll get a free novella story called The Letter Opener. And so that's over at artbyruth.com. And if you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe over at YouTube, follow me on Spotify and iHeartRadio, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. And let me know what you think by commenting or leaving a review. I'd love to know. Okay, on to the fun stuff. Tessa Afshar is with me today. That's right, she's the award-winning biblical fiction author. She has been on Publishers Weekly, CBA, and ECPA bestseller lists for years. And I'm thrilled to have her with me today. You're going to love this conversation. She is such an inspiration. So you know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, a comfortable chair, kick back and relax as we listen to Tessa Afshar talk about her new book. Welcome to the podcast, Tessa.
Ruth, it's a pleasure to join you and your listeners.
Yay! I'm so excited to meet you. I've seen, your books on and your posts on social media. So this is exciting that I finally get to talk with you.
It is exciting to I don't think we've ever talked on your podcast before. So for me, always joining a new podcast, a new venue is fun.
Yeah, it really is. But why don't you start off, though, telling my listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about your new book.
Well, my name is Tessa Afshar. I'm a full-time author. Most of my books, and what I'm mostly known for is fiction set in biblical times, so ancient historical fiction. You can tell from my accent that I have kind of a funny accent, and you're probably trying to figure out where I'm from. I was born in the Middle East. I lived there the first almost 14 years of my life, and then I moved to England, went to boarding school for girls. I lived there for a few years before coming to the US, and I've lived there most of the rest of my life. And in spite of my accent, I'm a very proud American citizen. But part of the reason the series we're going to talk about, I wrote this series is because I am from the Middle East. I'm from Persia, where Esther's from. And so it's always been sort of in the back of my mind that that's an era in the Bible, the Persian period, that I would love to write about.
Oh, I love that. And yes, your accent's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Well, a U.S. citizen, congratulations. When were you sworn in?
Oh, I can't even remember. I mean, it's been many years since
Oh, okay.
since I have, but yeah, I have to ask my husband if he can tell whether I have an accent or not. It's taken me a long time to actually pick it up myself, because often people say, "Where is your accent from?" And I'm like, "What accent?"
Yeah, I mean, it's not very obvious, but as you talk, I can hear it more. And it
Hmm.
does sound, Middle Eastern, definitely. Oh, wonderful. Wow, an English boarding school. What was that like?
I mean, when I started, I was 14, and I sort of went in with this idealized image. I thought I was going to go a place where I would have like 10 instant best friends, and we would stay up late and have pillow fights and, deep, deep conversations. And it wasn't like that at all. it's very traditional, at least when I went, which is a long time ago. It's very traditional. Everything was by the bell. It was quite an adjustment, but I think God used it for good for me.
Hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. So did you always know you were going to be a writer?
No, I don't think that's the case. I always wanted to write, but I grew up both in a household and in a culture that really focused being um, practical. So my dad was a doctor, and he really I think enjoyed my gift of writing. I remember one time he read a story I had written, and he got tears in his eyes, which he wasn't a very really like easy to cry kind of man, but he also immediately after that, I think he was afraid that I would get encouraged and think, oh, I can do this for a living and then ruin my life. So he was like, so how are you doing in math? How are you doing in science? Because that was sort of the message that I received was like, in
Hmm.
order for you to be a writer, you have to be Leo Tolstoy. And of
Mm.
course, I knew that's not who I was, and that's not what I was. So I always thought like this is just a hobby. And the idea that I could go on and become a full-time writer, like make my living as a writer, and not only that, but to do that after I had basically lost my language. So I had left the Middle East, I'd gone to a boarding school for girls in England, and I had to learn a whole new language, a whole new culture. And to sort of think that I could become a writer with a brand new language.
Mm.
These are the doors that God is able to open before us. I always encourage people with dreams that seem impossible to them that if you are walking in the path that God has ordained for you, nothing will stop it except for your own fears.
Ooh, wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And it is so true. Well, I love that, the Lord had your life take a different turn that perhaps you didn't think. And I'm so envious you get to write full time. That is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Ruth, it took me a while, so I always assumed in sort of the dreamy, very I just kind of ignorant way, to be honest, when I first started dreaming about writing a book, obviously I had a full-time job at the time. It was, kind of a full-on career and took a lot of time and energy. But I would write for fun, and it took me a long time to finish a book because I was so afraid of failure that I would get to, 30 pages, 15 pages, whatever. And a voice inside my head would say, don't bother finishing this. No one will ever read this. It's not good enough. And I always basically believed the voice that said it's not good enough. And I abandoned a lot of projects. And it wasn't, I was, what I call I'm a late bloomer. And it wasn't until one year where I was praying and I was saying, Lord, I really want to write a book. And I had this sense where this is the year you have to finish a book. Like commit to that or it will be too late. And so I made a commitment to God to finish a novel, not because I thought it would go on and be finished, it would go on and be published or be successful, but just because he wanted me to finish. I think just learning to finish a big project like that is really important for the soul. And so that's what I did. I finished that book and I couldn't believe that it went on and it was published. And in my mind, I always thought, okay, that's the hard part. Once you get your book traditionally published, you're done, right? Like that becomes your career. But that doesn't become your career. It just becomes your second career. So you have a career and then you have one on the side. And it took me about seven books to get to a point where I could go part-time, and then a year and a half later, I became full-time as a writer. So it took
Mm.
time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, that's the dream. I would love to be able to quit my full-time job and just write all the
Mhm.
time. That would be so wonderful. So that is the dream for some of us. And I know
Yeah.
I tend to romanticize it and think, if only I could write full time, then all my dreams would come true. Well, no, it would still be work. It would still be a lot of work. So I have to remember, don't romanticize it, Ruth.
Yeah, that's such a good advice you're giving yourself because it's true. Like any other job, writing isn't all writing. It's not all the stuff that you love. It's writing plus. There's a lot of work on the side you have to do in order for your books to land in the hands of the right readers for you, to discover those readers. So it is a job like any other, but if you are called to do it, there's nothing like it. So sort of hanging on through the hard years, through the years where you're doing your job and this, where it becomes this extra sort of difficult thing where like where do I even find the time? Where do I find the energy? Something's got to go. What is the thing that I've got to go in order to be able to write? All the sacrifices that you make. It's
Hmm.
all worth it if it's something that's part of your call and part of the way you're made.
Well, let's talk about your latest book that's out in the world, The Royal Artisan. Tell us about this story.
Well, thanks for asking about it. This is the second book in a three-book series that's set in the time of Esther. I because I was born in Persia, I never had heard about Esther until after I became a Christian in my 20s here in the US. And then I was starting to read the Bible more and more, and I was reading the names of all these kings that I knew from my girlhood. And I was like, wait, I studied these kings in school. I know this king, but I never heard about Esther because Esther is not mentioned in extra biblical history. Not until like 400 years later do you hear about her. But in the historical period where she herself lived, she's not recorded in the basically the records that we still have survived to this day. So I didn't know who Esther was, and I just was so excited about learning more about this extraordinary queen, a Jewish queen in a Gentile nation who made such a difference for her people. But so many people have written her story that I realized I don't want to write a story based on her as her being the main character. So I came up with the idea of writing three books set in the time of Esther based on three of Esther's good friends. So the first book was about a cook who was, a young woman who became the queen's cook and became a very important person in Esther's life. These characters are fictional. And then this second book is about a potter. It's about a young woman named Sazana who works in a pottery workshop, and she has become quite successful in Susa as a potter, except that her real name is Shoshana. She's Jewish, but she's hiding her identity because the owner of the workshop is none other than Haman. And then, of course, that whole story of Haman that we're familiar with
Hmm.
takes place, and Sazana ends up becoming a friend to Queen Esther, ends up playing a very important role in Esther's uh, life and Esther's efforts to save her people. So Sazana basically must risk everything to help Esther, but in the process finds her second chance at love because the man that Esther sends to protect her is no other than Jaden, the fellow who broke her heart 5 years earlier by breaking their betrothal.
Oh no. Okay, so there's the conflict and a little bit of romance, right?
For sure. There's a good bit of romance in this one. There's a little bit of also I try my books, although historical, they always have a bit of romance. And they always have a little bit of sort of mystery. So there's a mystery because there's an ancient artifact that they are trying to find because it's going to be important in the process of helping Esther.
Oh, okay. Well, this sounds exciting because I love any story that has to do with Esther. And this sounds intriguing. But what kind of research did you have to do for this story?
I always try to do several layers of research, Ruth. So there's always the biblical layer. understanding the text and understanding the text from that period. And what is it that God is trying to say through this main story and trying to stick to that, trying to be faithful to that. Then obviously you also have to do cultural, you have to do historical, you have to do archaeological research. So, and in particular for this story, I had already seen that relic that I told you about. It exists to this day.
Mm.
It's one of the most incredible archaeological remains that we have because basically you look at that remain and what you realize is that God's promises have been fulfilled. That's what that relic is showing, is proving that God made a promise to his people when they were taken as captives into Babylon. And God said, in 70 years, I will set you free. And that relic is showing that God keeps his promises, even when it seems impossible. So I do research where I can. I do a lot of reading. I get a lot of books, but I also, when possible, I do practical research. So she's a potter. So my husband and I took some private lessons. It was actually like one long lesson that of pottery, and so we learned how to do basic pottery, and then we returned again for doing the glazing.
Mm.
And of course, that's not ancient pottery, although our teacher taught us a little bit about ancient pottery. But at least I knew when she would sit down, what are the parts of your body that are going to get sore? And what are the parts of your body that are going to be touching the clay? And is the clay dry? Is it wet? What does it look like? All of that, so that I could, as I was writing about it, I could be accurate and I could bring it to life for my readers.
That's wonderful that you were able to take that pottery lesson. I'm an artist, and so I did pottery years ago when I was in art school. And I only made a mask and a couple of pots, but I never did the wheel. Were you able to test out the potter's wheel?
Yes, actually, that's the class that we took was the Potter's Wheel because that's what I wanted to have her work on. And I love that you're an artist, and I'm far from a potter. I learned enough to know I don't know anything, but as I said, it was just enough to be able to describe the process in a realistic way for my readers.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, sometimes we authors will use metaphors. So, was the fact that she's a potter, an artisan, and works in pottery and creates things with her hands, was that a metaphor for anything in your story?
Yes, because there's a metaphor that the Bible uses that I try to go, it's in Isaiah where we're told, God is our Father, and they don't understand Father the way Jesus teaches his followers what Father means, which is much more intimate. They understand Father as a Father of the nation. God is our Father, and he's the potter, we're the clay. So
Hmm.
there are a lot of moments, tiny moments, where she sort of equates us with clay. The fact that the clay, like you never know what's going to come out until the clay goes through the fire, basically, particularly from ancient pottery, because the clay isn't, you're not going to a factory to buy this perfectly formed clay. You're going to rivers and you're mixing your clay yourself.
Well, yes, when I took courses, the one thing you mentioned that really connected with me was the glazing. And I love that you use this, pottery as a metaphor and for that relationship between God and his people. And one thing I learned about glazing is the mixture is so important. And one thing we had to do was create gold. And we all
Wow.
looked at our teacher like, what? How on earth are we going to do that? So she showed us how to mix certain glaze, and it was the chemistry. And so
Mm.
it looked kind of reddish or greenish, when we would put it on the clay, it looked like nothing. It was boring, nothing
Mm.
exciting about it at all. And then, as you said, we had to put our pottery into the kiln at a certain amount of heat. We had to put it in the fire. And she said, if you mixed it right, you'll see gold. And we went,
Wow.
really? And so we would put our pottery in there and just keep our fingers crossed. And the fire would, burn away the dross and everything. And then she would turn it off. And when we could stand the heat, she would open it up and we would take out our pottery and hoping for gold. And one time I struck and I had gold on my pot and I could not believe it. So it is such a beautiful metaphor for God, isn't it? And how,
That's glorious. I wish I
right?
had that experience. I would definitely have written it in. I
It
didn't
was
have anything
amazing.
like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you mentioned that, I thought, oh, it is so true. Pottery metaphors in scripture, whether it's broken, mended by God, or like you
Yeah.
said, created by God, and God decides how he wants to use the pot, the pot, the clay doesn't question the potter. And so when you mentioned that, I just thought, yes, I remember that day when I was finally able to get gold out of
Yeah,
the
that's
glaze.
extraordinary. I hear all sorts of beautiful metaphors and stories from potters that obviously I sometimes think I wish I talked to you people before I wrote the book because my experience was limited. And so the way I use it is much more limited than people who have done pottery for a long time and have had experiences like you, like creating gold and all of that. But still, I think that again, the very fact that the Bible uses that metaphor is, I think uh, God wants us to have that image in mind somehow.
Well, so what lessons or themes do you want readers to take away from reading The Royal Artisan?
That's a great question. So there are a couple of things. First of all, the three main characters, Sazana, Jaden, and then Esther, because we hear from Esther throughout the book. Um, all three of them have what I would call an orphan spirit in a way, in an area of their lives where they have learned that it's up to them. Like it's up to them to protect themselves, or it's up to them to protect others, or it's up to them to be um, in control, to make sure that life that they succeed. It's everything comes down to them, and that's sort of a very spirit. It's a very orphan-like way to look at the world, and they all have to learn that actually God is their father. Their father, they're not alone, they're not abandoned, it's not up to them. They can trust him. And so there's a thread in the book of learning how to be fathered and how to surrender to that fatherhood, which I hope some of my readers who maybe there's a part of their heart that is living as an orphan will kind of sit up and say, hey, I need to learn that lesson. So that's definitely one part of it. There's another part where uh, she's my main character, Sazana, has a very hard time speaking, putting her thoughts to words. It takes her a little bit longer, and she's learned to be very shy because taking longer to express her thoughts has meant, especially as a kid, that the other kids have made fun of her and basically think of her as being very boring because by the time she gets to say something, everybody else has moved on to another topic.
Mm.
And so she's come to hate this part of herself. She's come to reject this part of herself. And she's having a conversation with Esther one time and she says, I wish I wasn't built like that. And Esther says something that as I was writing, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to sit up and take notice of this. Esther says, never reject or never hate your own creation because God created you like this. And if you were to change this one part, who knows but that everything else would also fall apart and you wouldn't be you anymore. You wouldn't be the you that he needs on this earth. Never reject your creation. And I thought, how many of us, how many of my readers have parts of themselves that they don't like, that they have rejected and they don't even know that they have, or subconsciously or very consciously really dislike. And how we have to sort of repent of that and say, God, you made me this way. It's not, I'm not talking about the sin or the
Hmm.
brokenness. I'm talking about the way we're made. And you made me this way, and it's inconvenient and sometimes it's difficult. But if you made me this way, you had a purpose in it. And so forgive me for rejecting myself. Forgive me for almost hating a part of me because that's your creation.
Ooh, wow, Tessa, that's powerful because that is so appropriate for what we are dealing with today, right?
Mhm.
Questioning our purpose, questioning what God created, how He created us. Oh, that is so incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
Well, listeners, the Royal Artisan is out in the world right now. It released November 4th. And so head over to Amazon to get your copy. And you can go to Tessa's website and get all her books, including The Royal Artisan, at tessaafshar.com. Beautiful website too, Tessa. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, we just recently revamped it and I'm very happy with it.
And folks can sign up for your newsletter there.
They absolutely can. They'll receive a kind of a long short story because I don't know how to write short stories. And so if you sign up, you will receive a monthly newsletter with a free, usually I have a devotional and prayer and obviously book news. But when you sign up, you also will receive a free short story.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, so head over to tessaafshar.com. And so what's coming next? What are you working on next?
So the next novel is the third book in the series, the third and final book in the series. And it's about a young woman who is um, basically she has worked as a stable groom because her father was a stable master all her life. And then when her father passes away and the son of the Lord becomes the new Lord, he throws her out. So she decides to go to the palace to find a job. And the day she arrives, there's a royal woman whose horse takes off. And so she runs after her and saves her life, basically. And it turns out that that woman is Esther. So Esther hires her, but they discovered that the reason her horse is taking off is because someone has been trying to kill her. And so they have to discover who's doing this. And there is a former spy who hates the spy life, but Esther asks him to come back one more time and help her. And so he becomes the helper for Dana in order for them to save Esther's life. So that's the book I'm working on right now, and I hope that you will be able to read it next fall.
Oh, wonderful. So folks, head over to tessaafshar.com, sign up for her newsletter so you'll know about these, all of her book news and when this next book in Queen Esther's Court releases next year. Well, Tessa, this has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and, talking about the Lord and Esther and your amazing book, The Royal Artisan. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast today.
It's been a pleasure to join you, and thank you so much for asking those great questions.
What a delight that was to talk with Tessa on my podcast. Oh, what a thrill. I mean, I've seen her all over social media for years, and so this has just been a dream come true for me. And it was everything I knew it would be. So like I said, head over to Amazon or her website and get The Royal Artisan today. Let her know what you think of this amazing story. Your reviews really do help authors. And head over to her website as well to learn more about her and her upcoming book 3 in this amazing Queen Esther's Court series. I hope that you've been encouraged by Tessa's story about how she became a writer, how she found her voice, and how she researches these amazing stories. So, like I always say, keep going on this writing journey, one step at a time. And until next time, thanks for listening. God bless.